Hello and welcome to the 25th anniversary of the Nordby Loss and Grief Lecture Series. We are so excited to have you join us this evening to learn about recognizing grief as a powerful life skill. If there is one thing, well, actually two, no, really a lot of things that grief has taught me is that it is inevitable. We're all going to experience it, and it sure is messy. Tonight's event would not be possible without the generous donation given by Keith and Charlotte Nordby. Although they are no longer physically with us, they left a legacy of care and support for others when establishing this endowment to help the community understand the emotional processes of grief and loss. The Nordbys, as leaders in the community, are very passionate about educating the public on grief and therefore partnered with North Hennepin Community College to make sure that this legacy lives on. Today, their son Kent and daughter-in-law Dawn continue to foster a close relationship with the NHCC Foundation in supporting our efforts. Also, a big thank you to the NHCC Foundation, Human Services Department, the Care Center, and some very special students for helping this evening all come together. Marissa, can you tell us about what we can expect this evening?
Yeah, hello everyone and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. My name is Marissa Anchando and I'm president of the North Hennepin Community College Human Services Club, students serving our community. In fall of last school year, our club helped put together the Suicide, the Ripple Effect event to discuss grief around the topic of suicide. Our last event was so impactful, we immediately began coming up with ideas for next year's event. It was very disheartening when we heard that we would not be able to hold this year's event in person. However, due to a few awesome planners, staff, students, and volunteers, we were able to put together this wonderful online event. We have put other plans on hold for the time being and look forward to see them come to fruition in our next in-person event. If you're interested in helping plan or be a part of our grief events, contact the students serving our community club. Today's event focuses on loss and grief, specifically while living through a global pandemic, our current unfortunate reality. We have several amazing professionals here today to help us through this conversation. We will begin with an introduction to grief and loss outside of death with our keynote speaker. Then we will do 3 10-minute segments on processing and coping with loss and grief with some music, movement, and mindfulness. Finally, we will have a short question and answer segment afterwards to debrief and discuss today's event. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Ben Musburger. He is a grief educator, grief therapist, and licensed marriage and family therapist. He has provided care to the community for the past 8 years with a local hospice agency. Ben believes that grief is both incredibly difficult and valuable part of life. He supports people in befriending grief and establishing grief processes. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you, Marissa. Before I begin, I would also like to thank the Nordby family for making this event possible, as well as North Hennepin Community College for this opportunity. To the planning committee and to the panelists tonight, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to you, and it's been a real pleasure to see how much you care for your community to make opportunities like this possible. To our event participants tonight in attendance, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your lives to focus on what has been, I think, one of the core issues of our world and of our society. I hope tonight is meaningful to you and that we're able to somehow connect with ourselves and with each other despite limitations posed by a virtual format. So I will begin by saying this, and it might be one of the more obvious statements I'm going to make tonight. We have an opportunity together to grieve. And yes, we have a lot to grieve. We have lived through and are living through a historic event that has caused us harm. And what I'm going to pose to you tonight, along with the panelists, is that harm requires our tender care. As a grief therapist, simply put, my role is to support people with grieving. One of the things that comes with that, and it's not always something that's welcome, is to encourage people to grieve. As you imagine, when I say something like that, I get a lot of different responses. Some of it's why on earth would I want to grieve? No, you got to be kidding me. Maybe a swear word here and there. But what I hope to frame for you tonight is that grieving is natural. It's something we all do, and it's a way that we heal through events like COVID-19. Grief, in my mind, offers us a path to deal with our suffering in new ways. And if you don't believe me now, that's all right. I got 30 minutes to open your mind to that concept. To start with, I think it's important that we frame this around just some basic concepts. One being, what is this thing called grief? So let's start there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to go through this quite deliberately. I think I've actually spoken about this definition of grief for 30 minutes in itself. But this is a definition that I've pulled together through my work and my experience. I think I can call it my own definition as much as anything is mine. Version 4.0, I present to you a working definition of grief. And I'm going to go just word by word, because I think each word in this holds meaning for us and significance. So the first word in this, I'll read the whole statement first. It's grief is a natural, whole person response to a change or event of any kind. A natural, whole person response to a change or reality of any kind. Said it right the second time. So let's start with natural. What does that word mean to you? When I include natural in this, what it means to me is that this is something that is a part of all of us. It's not abnormal. It's not outside of the human experience. It's very much a part of what it means to be alive, what it means to be moving through life. I like to say this, and for those who have heard me speak in class before, and this comes from an author named Judith Viorst, is that grief begins really at birth. And if you think about that at that kind of concept is, when you're in the womb, when a baby's in the womb, it's safe, it's secure, it's warm, it has every need in this whole wide world met for it. And then what happens when it comes into the world? The baby suddenly needs to learn how to breathe, how to eat, how to connect with its mother in a new way. And that's grief. That is loss. So my belief is that loss is something we do from beginning of life till the very end. It's always happening. And what that also means then is that you have grieved before. You have been grieving, even if that's not something necessarily that you would identify. The other part about natural that I think is crucial to this conversation is it also means that you're not alone. If we're all doing this, we're doing this together. And I think suffering in our society, and I'll pontificate on this a bit later, is something that tends to isolate us. And I think grief in some ways, because it's a natural thing that we all go through, we all live with, that brings us into unity, that brings us into connection. So natural is an important word. The next phrase in this is whole person. And personally, this is, for me, one of the reasons why grief is so challenging and why it hurts as much as it does. Whole person means it impacts us in a multitude of ways. The feeling part of it, the emotions, that's something that generally we're pretty aware of. When we feel sad, when we feel afraid, when we feel anxious, when we feel isolated, misunderstood, confused. I think that part of grief is usually pretty clear to us because it's hard to ignore. It also affects our body in different ways, crazy ways, biological ways. Some of you have maybe heard of broken heart syndrome, where after a tragic event, scientists have discovered that people's heart actually enlarges and people are more susceptible to cardiac events. It affects our appetite, it affects our heart rate. It's a very body-based experience. And speaking from my work, I've actually worked with people who went to the emergency room and were referred to me because what they were going through, it wasn't a heart attack, it wasn't some kind of obstruction in their stomach, it was grief. So grief is very physical. It also affects how we think. I don't know about you, but I know at different points in my life, it feels like you're in a haze. It feels like you can't quite sort things out. And it can feel like you've lost some of your sharpness, some of your decision-making ability, something of a fog of sorts. If you're not scared of grief yet, I'm going to keep going here. It also challenges our beliefs and our values. Speaking of COVID directly, I think a lot of us have questioned, what is this all about? What is the purpose of all this? Where do I go from here? Who am I now? These big kinds of existential questions that cause us pain, cause us agony. We have this lack of certainty about things that felt very certain. Grief also changes how we act and how we behave. So some of us, when we're grieving, we withdraw. Some of us have sleep issues. We change our eating habits. Grief is this multitude of experiences, and it all happens, and it can all happen at once. It can all happen in concert. So this is, and I use the word suffering, and I don't use that lightly. Grief is a suffering. So I'm going to start over here. A natural whole person response is the next word. For me, I think that's pretty simple. It means this just happens. It happens. I expect tonight as I talk here, grief is going to happen to me, presenting to you. So this isn't something that we can stop. It's automatic. It's a response. The next part of the definition, and I'm going to parse out a few things here, is it's a response to what? A response to a change. And I'll just add this, a change of any kind. So when we look at life, leaving the womb was my earlier example of change. Grief accompanies every change that I can think of, literally. Maybe I'm not using my imagination, I don't know. But grief comes with change. And the any kind part of this might even mean that changes that we would say are overall positive for us. Anyone who's moved or gotten a job promotion, even went back to school or started school, while there's excitement with those kinds of things and those milestones, there's often some sadness too. I'm going to miss my old colleagues. I'm going to miss my commute. I'm going to miss this familiarity here. So grief isn't something only that happens in a pandemic or something tragic. It's really happening with any change that we might experience. The next part of this is reality, and I use that word somewhat pensively these days. I don't know that I want to debate what reality is, and I'm not a metaphysicist or anything like that. But reality, why this is added here, is there are some things that haven't changed. There are some things that just are. And I'll use a story from my personal life. So I grew up, and I've shared this with different people, I grew up with a parent who had pretty severe mental health issues. And that has been a part of my life. I do not know something other than that. So that's not necessarily a change that I grieve. It's the reality of this. the reality of not having a parent who's healthy and able to contribute in certain ways. So we all have these realities that are very personal realities. I will throw in here, and I hope this isn't too controversial. We also have these other realities, you know, and here I would say fits things like discrimination, racism, gender inequalities, income disparities, wealth disparities, access to healthcare. These things that have been problems in our world, and it's not something new. It's not a change. It's something that we have to come back to and grieve. So a natural whole person response to a change or reality of any kind. And I'm open to the ideas about adding or modifying this definition at the end. I would like to get to version 5.0 at some point. Next slide, please, Dustin. All right, so looking at this, I think this is a nice visual representation. And if I were a better artist, I probably would have made this a circle because I think it goes on in a limitless way. This is an adaptation from these two psychologists, Nordby and Shooter, their names, who invented something called the dual process model to describe grieving. I have a little bit of a twist on it, but basically what it says is that human beings are always moving between a growth and loss-oriented focus. So at different points in a minute, in an hour, in a day, in a lifetime, we are constantly moving between these two poles. One might say they're essential for each other. And maybe I'll use an example for that. For those of you who have ever left your parents and moved out kind of into the world on your own, that is a necessary step for some people in their life development. And it's also a loss. So the loss is necessary. The loss of leaving home is necessary in order to grow. I personally have come to think that this is happening all the time below our awareness, that we're shifting from this grieving to growth. And when I say growth, it's generally viewed like new activities, striving towards things, something that's kind of generative and creative, reaching out towards life. And then thinking of loss as something that's kind of pausing, reflecting, digesting, metabolizing that experience. Next slide, please. Okay, so grieving. This is my other very intentional definition. So if you fell asleep during my grief definition, I apologize in advance. Grieving, I'm gonna go really slow through this again. So a healing process that unfolds through our attention to an expression of suffering. A healing process that unfolds through our attention to an expression of suffering. The first part of this, the healing, is obviously crucial. So earlier when I said that part of my role is to encourage people to grieve, this is why. This is how healing of our hearts, healing of our souls can happen. In my understanding of things, we have a lot of trust in our bodies, generally speaking, that our bodies are able to heal. If I were to somehow injure myself later tonight, like hurt my back, let's say, I have a degree of confidence that with some Advil, some time, some ice, maybe I have to go to a doctor, that my body is going to put itself back together. One invitation that we have is to also trust in our heart and our soul that can happen for the suffering that we feel in our lives. And that's a confidence that I think we have some barriers to overcome, and I'll share that in a little bit here. The other part of this is the process, and I think that's key too. Process, simply put, means it's something that occurs over time. There are certain maybe steps or advancements. For grief, I think one of the hard things is it's not a linear process. This isn't, I went to the gym, I lifted 5 pounds last week, and now I'm lifting 10 pounds 2 weeks later. Grief has many false starts. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And it's a process that I think really challenges our patience and really challenges our hope. Part of what I'll say at the end to you is trust your process. You might not know where it's going. You might not know when the end's going to come. But there is this healing, and it is happening. And I can speak from personal experience, talking with people. Sometimes that healing happens fast. Sometimes it happens slow. Sometimes you can see it coming. Other times it surprises you. Another thing about this healing process is that it really unfolds. And this is endlessly frustrating to us. I know for myself included, I want to grieve and I want to be done with it. And, usually if I could do it faster, that's better than doing it slower. But grief marches to its own rhythm. Grief takes as long as it needs to take. And I think the word unfolds kind of, implies that passive, this is happening. And I can't force it. I can't make it do anything. It has to just unfold like a flower blooming. A flower blooms when it needs to bloom, and it's not going to bloom sooner or later based on my wishes. The next part of this is key, and this is, I think, also very challenging. This process requires certain things of us, and one could argue it's going to happen without these things, but what I've found is this is essential to the healing. Is we need to give our attention to our suffering. And the kind of attention really is key too. So by attention, that could mean noticing it. It could mean giving it a name. It could mean crying. It could mean sharing it with somebody in my life. Our grief does not want to be ignored. It requires us to come close to it and to give it our attention. The other part is expression of that suffering. And I would say this is true of other feelings too. And I think a lot of us anecdotally know this, is there's some kind of discharge that needs to happen when we're carrying that hurt. We need to take it and we need to put it into the world in some way. Maybe that is through a conversation. Maybe that's through a song. Maybe it's through writing. Maybe it's for going through a run, exercise. Maybe it's creating a ritual of sorts to recognize what it is you've lost. But there's something about grief where it's not this solitary, just internal activity. It has to somehow come out into the world. So what I'm pitching you on, I'd rather be selling you the newest iPhone, but what I'm pitching you on is that this healing process is necessary for you and for me in order to heal. And that to do that, we're going to need to go towards our grief, give it attention, and give it a place for expression. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I wish I was in a room with you, not the first time tonight. But what keeps you from grieving? So this is a question, and if you could just take a few moments of silence here to think about this. What keeps you away from your grief? What holds you back from being a companion to your pain? All right. Well, let's see what some ideas are, and maybe you identified some of these for yourself. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go through these, and I think I have to do it pretty quickly. But these are some common reasons, and you maybe came up with something entirely different than this. Before I kind of critique these, I think these reasons are worthy of our respect. These reasons for not grieving or staying away from our pain, as I phrased it, they're legitimate. And often why we adhere to these barriers or let them stop us is because we're trying to protect something. Maybe we're trying to protect ourselves or someone else. So obviously fear of all shapes and sizes keeps us away from our pain. Fear that I might fall apart, fear that I might not be able to go on, fear that it's going to hurt too much. The list of fears is endless. Moving left to right here across the top, medicalization, meaning this, and I want to speak cautiously here. We have a culture that has taken the human condition, and we have healthcare services that are meant to support us in our health, and I know they do. And I'm not here to critique anyone who's helping anyone with their pain. I think one of the unintended consequences of that is we have also view our inner state, or we're encouraged to at least, as some sort of medical problem. So I'm grieving. I haven't gotten out of bed all day. I cry at the slightest anything. I am sick. I think that's the conclusion that the medicalization of our experience encourages us toward, instead of saying something more like, I said it earlier, I am normal. I am hurting. This needs my attention. I think the idea that something is wrong with us and that we're sick, and that's scary. It's scary to be sick. That's something that can create distance from that companionship. Roles is another thing. How many of you are the rock in your family? Are you allowed to grieve if that's the case? If you're somebody that's out working 2-3 jobs, do you have the luxury of coming home and grieving and spending time with that? If you're a parent and your kids are your life and you're busy with that, do you have the opportunity to grieve? Maybe not. Cultural rules is another one, and there's infinite cultures. I use that term broadly, but there's a lot of rules against this, of expressing our feelings, of allowing ourselves that space to be tender. America, Western culture, we've got this bootstraps mentality that only the going get tough and the tough get going. If I'm hurt, it better be brief and I better be over it tomorrow. Our culture does not really support us pausing and being with our experience, and that's infinite. Even cultures around like social media and things like that. There's a lot of rules that we're pressured to abide by. Silence, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know that people inquire seriously how we're doing, even if they might know we're having a hard time. I think often our pain is not met with outreach; it's met with silence. Family rules is similar to cultural rules in that families have different ways of handling pain, of handling emotional situations. My experience, and maybe it's biased because of who I'm working with, is I think a lot of families close this down. There isn't a permission to hurt and to ache and to do so in an open and supportive way. So this is a way that I would invite people to, you can be an influence in your family of how we approach these struggles. Safety, I think this is key. Do we have safe places, safe spaces for this kind of vulnerability that grieving represents? Stigma, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then shame. I think the other thing, and this is why I love that natural word, is a lot of us, I think, believe something is defective about us. So if I am down, if I'm grieving heavily, that's somehow some commentary on my worth, on my value, on my, on my very, very soul in some ways. So these are our barriers, or some of them at least. And why I think it's important that we give them a name and identify them as such, is then we can notice them. We can notice when they're getting in the way. And we can also give them respect, because I think if you do look at this, they are in some ways trying to help us, or at least think they're trying to help us. Next slide, please. All right, so COVID, and I don't know. I think when talking about something like this, words fall short. I don't know how we can necessarily put the impact this has had on us into its proper context with all due respect. Some ways that I've been thinking about this and experiencing it, I'll just try to explain the uniqueness of this to you. COVID is global, and global in the literal sense and the metaphoric sense. A lot of loss events happen, maybe within an individual or within a family, within a community, maybe with a catastrophe like a hurricane, we see it in a city. COVID is truly a global crisis. It's happening everywhere. And then it's also happening on a very, very local level. And one of the impacts of this in my thinking is that when we're all struggling, when we're all hurting about similar things, I think this has suppressed our ability to support each other. Who do we turn to for that anchoring when all of us are plunged into this? The other thing that I think has been challenging along this similar lines is that this is a relational and individual event. So our relationships have been frayed. We haven't been able to, in some ways, connect with each other. I mean, think of class itself. Normally, what would happen in school is people would be going there, they would be interacting, they would be learning from each other, they would be making connections, they would be supporting each other. We've lost some of that relational support in this. And we also see relational strain and relational struggles. A lot of families have had to navigate new complexities because of this, whether it be homeschooling, a loss of income, a loss of job security, people doing new roles, even just being in tight quarters. And some of you are probably familiar with this. I mean, there's been a lot of stories about how, things like alcohol use and abuse, things like that are elevated. We're struggling to relate to each other in this space. And obviously, it's a very individual experience. Each of us carries our own heartache and hardship in the midst of this. The other thing, and I would add this, so this is a very ambiguous yet concrete event. So Pauline Boss, who was actually a professor at the University of Minnesota, I believe still is, coined this term ambiguous loss, which means it's a loss that's confusing, uncertain, hard to kind of put your finger on. COVID has been rife with that. When this first happened, we didn't even know really what was going on. We didn't know how this virus worked. We didn't know how to protect ourselves. I don't know that we really even understood our experience at that time. I think, we've been in a state of shock at different points. When will this end? There's a lot of ambiguity to this. And then there's also very, very, very concrete things that we can point to. I didn't get to walk in graduation. I missed out on that milestone. My wedding was canceled. I lost my job. My loved one died. These very concrete things are happening in the midst of this generally murky situation. Next slide, please. All right. So if your heart is a little open to grieving, I'd like to invite you to take a deep breath and just spend a moment. You can say it out loud. You could write it down. You could think it, feel it. Just take a moment of silence here and consider how COVID has impacted you. Keep breathing. All right, let's come back and go to the next slide. I invite you to take another deep breath. Let's look at this heart here. Maybe you see something that came to your mind, or came out of your pen. I'm sure this is not all inclusive. Take a moment and just look at this. Does any of this resonate? Is any of this true? Notice what's happening in your body. Notice what's going through your mind. Is this some of it? Next slide, please. So what do we do with all that? What do we do with all that? Well, I want to invite you tonight to consider creating a grief practice. And that's language I borrowed from a mentor of mine named Terry Karras, who practices therapy in Uptown. A practice. A practice is something that's intentional, it's repeated, it's a craft of sorts. Your grief craft. And I understand it's not something you would want to make. And I don't want to make mine either. But it's something we need. So I'm going to offer you in a few moments just a buffet of things that might be something for your grief practice, and take and leave what you will. But this is what I've seen. This is what I've seen people do. So we talked about this earlier. Just notice your experience. Just pay attention to yourself. Notice the barriers even. Pay attention to that. Try to treat yourself a certain way. And I think this is hard. A lot of us have this critical voice inside that really wants us to do well and wants us to do better and wants us to excel and succeed and all those noble things. But that part of us can really, really, really hurt us when we're already hurting. So try on a stance. Try to treat yourself with kindness, curiosity. Affirm that how you feel is legit. There's not something wrong with you, that this is your experience. Validate yourself. Tell yourself you're feeling exactly the way you should feel given what you've been through. Be with it. This one sounds so simple, and every time I say it and write it, I kind of chuckle because it sounds so simple, and I know it's not. And just sit. Let it wash over you. Let it grip you. Give it your time. It's there. Give it your time. A name. And that's what I was trying to do, you know, with that heart when we were thinking there is give it a name. There's something that matters when we claim something as ours, when we recognize it. Describe what's happened for you. Claim it as yours. Make space. I think that's kind of similar to be with it. It might happen in a more outward way. I give you an example here. My daughter, she had a lot of anxiety when I would go to work early in this, and she knew that coronavirus was dangerous. She knew her school was canceled because of it. And every day she would cry when I was leaving the house, you know, Daddy, you're gonna be okay. So what we would do is I started every day. I would take some goofy picture of me in a mask, eyes bugging out, hair a mess, and I would send that to my better half for her to show my daughter. You know, we made space for that grief. And there's ways you could do that too. Patience, patience, patience. When we're miserable, patience is hard to come by. Remind yourself that this will work itself through. Don't rush yourself. Taking breaks. We all need breaks from this. Give yourself permission to tune out. You know, surf the web, play video games. You know, every now and then, you know, whatever, have a beer, whatever. We all need breaks from our pain. And I think we've pathologized some of that too. That obviously, you know, there's such a thing as excess, but treat yourself too. Buy yourself those shoes every now and then. Ritual, that can be important. What I described with my daughter could also be viewed as that. You know, there's this thing that you do intentionally to call your awareness to that. Maybe it's, you know, scheduling that hour-long call with your sibling on a Friday night every week. That's your time. That's a ritual you've established in this pandemic. Coping strategies, and we're going to hear more of those from our panelists here and in your kit that you're going to get from this event. Rely on them. You have them. Now's not the time to push them away. And I think one of the issues is sometimes it feels like we don't have enough of those, which is where I think the attitude about grieving and our practice about grieving can come in and supplement. Bring it into relationship. Don't do this alone. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, chat with someone online, go to a therapist. Bring it out, bring it into relationship. Don't carry it alone. Trust your resilience, trust your process. I don't know any of you and I can't see any of you, but I have no doubt that you are strong, that you've weathered things before, and that you can weather this too, and that you have a process to heal within you. Something else that can be really lifting in this, and it's hard to find lifting things, which is why they put the exercise stuff after my presentation here. Meaning and gratitude are present in this. And maybe you can relate to this. I don't know, my family took this COVID thing really seriously. We, you know, didn't see each other for months. So my parents, for example, I didn't see them, I think, for 5 months. And then we had one of those weird outdoor hangout things. And I don't know, when I saw them, they looked older to me. And I had gratitude for that time in a new way. Before it's just, oh, there's mom and dad. But I saw them with new eyes, an open heart, and that's there in this. if we could stay open to it. One of the things about loss and grief is that I think it points us towards, in some ways, what really matters. It points us towards, I don't know, each other. And it's easy to get distracted in a lot of things. Just try to keep your heart open for those things. They're there, I promise. Learn about grief. This is a start for maybe some of you knew all this already. There's stuff out there. There's books, there's online resources. We don't get a baseline of grief learning. Nobody teaches us in school, and like I was saying, in our families, in our broader culture, we don't learn how to suffer. Nobody shows us the way. No one is a role model and how to do this. So I think one of the things that's incumbent upon us is to study this ourselves and try to seek that out. Because if you believe me, it's a part of life. You're already a student. You're already learning. And the other part of this, I have a little fun with this actually. I can have fun. Challenging these dominant cultures. I like to view a grief-informed way of being, a grief-informed culture. I like to think that I'm kind of turning things upside down a little bit. I'm challenging the old guard. I'm challenging white male privilege. I'm challenging these things that have confined us and held us back from ourselves. Maybe you find some rally in that. Maybe that sparks you a little bit towards this grief practice. Next slide, and I went over time as promised. This will be my last slide of the night. I just want to end on a poem. And this is an excerpt from a poem. It's called Talking to Grief by Denise Levertov. And I think it kind of summarizes nicely what I'm proposing to you. And the whole poem is beautiful if you want to find it. But it says, "Ah, grief, I should not treat you like a homeless dog who comes to the back door for a crust, for a meatless bone. I should trust you. I should coax you into the house and give you your own corner, a warm mat to lie on, your own water dish." Thank you. All right, well, now I'm going to pass the program to Shelley Siegel. Shelley is the Director of TRIO Programs and an adjunct faculty member at North Hennepin Community College. She is also a certified group fitness instructor. Shelley will be demonstrating some simple moves to get your blood going. She also teaches a free online 30-minute cardio strength workout on Tuesdays and Thursdays via Zoom. Check her handout out in the care package when it arrives at your home.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was wonderful. I am grateful. I had not heard Ben before, so that was new to me, and that was such good messaging for us all. And so once again, I am grateful to be here. I'm Shelley Siegel, like Ben said, and I am a certified fitness instructor. And I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the Nordbys. I know there's some of my regular students out in the audience. Hello. I am going to do a 10-minute demo of my class just to get you moving. So I know some of you are probably sitting in chairs. Some of you may not have, put on your workout clothes. That's okay. But I'm going to ask you to join me if you feel willing and if you feel able to get up out of your chair, unless you're in a car. Please don't try this if you're driving. And we're just going to do 10 minutes of some simple cardio workout, basic moves to get your blood going. As we know, when we're grieving and when we're stuck living in Minnesota, we have to keep ourselves moving. It helps our endorphins. It helps our overall health. It helps our sleep. So allow me to just, I play a little bit of funky music. And so join me. I have my timer, so we're only going to do 10 minutes. All right, I get my timer started. And if you're not going to join me, just imagine yourself doing these moves with me. You're going to follow along, and I think you'll benefit. And yes, if you're interested in coming to my class anytime, it's free. Look at the handout. Are you ready to do this? Let's go. All right, here's my music. Hopefully you can hear. All right, here we go. I just want you to start by marching. If you can, just march. Just to get the blood moving. Now I'm going to ask you to take a big inhale up and exhale. Again, inhale up. 2 more times. This time, round the back and open the chest. Start to bend the knees just a little bit. Are you with me out there? When I do my class, cameras are off. So I'm not sure if people are with me or not. I'm just assuming they are. I'm betting they are because they're always sweaty afterwards. All right, we're going to inhale, exhale. Hold it here. We're going to squat down and up. I'm turning to the side so you can see. I'm sitting in a chair. My weight is in my heels. Down, up, down, and up. Let's do 8 more. Samantha, are you doing this? Are you? Dustin? Ben? Ben, I hope you're with me. Up and down. All right, we're going to lift the knees. Down, come up. We're just simply squatting and lifting. Now we're going to kick. Kicking our legs. Standing up tall, shoulders down. Pointing our toes. Kicking. Right? Just shake it out. 8 more. 7, 6, 5. Back to that. Inhale up. Here we go. Inhale up. 2 more times. Stretching. I lied. 1 more time. Rounding the back. Just like this time getting a bit deeper into those feet. Let the head go. Squat again, down, up. This time, use the arms overhead. I'm in my kitchen. This is where we have to sometimes do our workouts. If you don't have a gym in your house, and the gym is closed, right? Lift the knees. Down and up. 4 more. 3, 2, kick. Kick it. Stand up tall, slightly lean back. All right, we're going to step to the side. This is option 1. Just tapping side to side, left and right. We're not going to work up too much of the sweat today, so I just wanted you to see some of the basic moves. How this goes. Now we're going to reach down, and hop in the middle, just a slight hop in the middle, or tap. Up to you. You know your body and its limitations. Down. Now we're going to take our arms overhead, right and left. Yep. Stay here for 8 more. 7. Now both arms pull down. I'm wearing weighted gloves just for a little bit extra arm work. Yep. March it out. Knees up. We're gonna crunch. Knees come up. 4 knees, 4 kicks, 4 of them. Now kick. 4 knees, 4 kicks. Front kick, back kick. Add a little punch. I'll turn to the side so you can see. I'm kicking my refrigerator. Because I just know my dinner's in there. I'm so excited. I want to open that fridge so bad. March it out. Knees up once more. This time, we're going to break a stick. We're going to imagine that we're breaking a stick on our upper thigh, our quadriceps, right here. Now kick. Maybe you took a break and you're eating your dinner right now. That's okay, because you know, in your mind, your body can do these things. Following along with me, front kick, back kick, other leg. I also think that even if you watch exercise, you can maybe get motivated to try and do one thing each day. Front kick, back kick. Let's do 4 more of those. 4, 3. Now we're gonna jump rope. Just nice and light on the feet, circling that imaginary rope. Or you can march. Hold it here. I'm going back to the 80s. This is called a grapevine. Step behind, tap, step behind. Try it if you're with me. I'm going to want to know how many people actually are following along with me after this. We only have 2 minutes left. Grapevine. Now we're going to do a hamstring curl. Hamstring curls. That's just curling. Guess what? Those hamstrings. Yep. Now we're going to open up the chest. Right here. Open wide. We're going to double this up in a minute. We're going to do 2 hamstring curls on each side. Are you ready, joiners? 2 of them. Keep going. Opening the chest. Now 4 on each side. 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more time each side. Hold it here, squat down and up. Now my feet are wide. I'm going to touch down, hop up. Touch down, hop up. 8 of them. 4 more. Or you don't have to hop. Back to that grapevine. Keep going. 4 of them. 3, 2, hamstring curl. 2 on each side. Down and up. Down, hop up. Down, 2 more. Down, hop up. Now twist right here. Just twist. Upper body only. Hips are still. Twist, twist, twist. If you can, twist, twist, knee. Hold it here. Twist. Other side, twist, twist, knee. Twist, twist, knee. There it is. 4 more. Time's running out. I have 1 second. There it is. I'm gonna march. Keep doing it. I'm just gonna do a couple stretches just so you can stretch it out right here. Hamstring stretch. Other side. You can always use a chair for balance or your refrigerator if you need to have some balance. Ah, yeah. Let's inhale up one more time. Exhale, last time. You are done. I hope you had fun. All right, well, guess what? I'm going to introduce our next speaker. So I'm going to give me 1 second because I don't want to mispronounce any names, but our next speaker is Kayla Schaefer. She's a board certified music therapist and co-founder of Keynote Music Therapy, which is a private practice serving the Twin Cities metro area. She's also a music therapist at Children's Minnesota, where her work with youth grief groups is one of the most rewarding aspects of her job. Kayla.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Shelley. That was wonderful. I'm wondering if maybe I shouldn't have participated so vigorously now having to present, but thank you for that. It was a great reminder that our grief really does need a place to go, as Ben mentioned. We do need to move through it, and exercise and movement is certainly a wonderful way to do that. I'm going to give you another way of moving through it. My tool as a music therapist is, of course, music. So to start here, I'm going to play an excerpt of a piece of music, and all I want you to do is simply notice what comes up. Does a memory or a feeling come up for you? Just notice what it is. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. So I wonder if any of you, since I cannot see you to ask you, I can't ask for a show of hands. I wonder if any of you thought of a movie or a TV show that you have heard that song in. I wonder if any of you have performed it yourself on the piano or a voice recital or a choir. I wonder if any of you had a caregiver or a loved one that loves or loved that song. As a music therapist, I individualize goals. So not being able to see you and talk to you and facilitate a group experience is challenging, but that is a song that often will bring up a reaction for people. We're going to transition now to a more personal experience. I'm going to ask you to consider your own musical memory. A musical memory could be a song that you associate with a special day in your life, maybe a ceremony or a family event. Maybe it's a song that a loved one or a caregiver sang to you as a child. Maybe it's a song you remember singing with your friends when you were a teenager in the car. Access that musical memory now. I'm going to start this experience and end it with the sound of a chime. As the chime fades and you consider your own personal musical memory, try to picture what you were doing. Who were you with? What do you see around you? What's in the room? What's the lighting like? What's the temperature? What else do you hear? Are your other senses awakened? Were you eating or drinking? Were you wearing a favorite piece of clothing? Most importantly, how do you feel? Sit with that feeling for a moment. I wonder if you can hear the lyrics of a song, if your song has lyrics. I wonder if you can hear the instrumentation. I wonder if you can feel the rhythm or the tempo or speed in your body. Again, how do you feel? You're going to hear the chime again, and I invite you to come back to this moment. So our brain programs that memory that you just accessed more strongly. It is programmed more strongly because of its pairing with music. It would not surprise me if you told me that you were able to actually recreate the way you felt when that memory first happened. The neural pathways in your brain are actually stronger with music memories and those musical moments in your life because of the unique elements that music possesses. So music actually activates over 30 areas of the brain, and the entire brain is involved in perceiving, processing, interacting with, and making music. So there isn't a music center of the brain. So included in these 30 areas, of course, is our emotional center. That's probably not surprising to you. We access music all the time to feel a certain way. But those emotional centers that are activated further explain why you can actually reproduce the feeling that you had when you first experienced that musical memory. So how does all of this relate to grief? Well, maybe you're already starting to make those connections. But music can, of course, trigger grief reactions just as easily as whatever emotion you just accessed. Maybe some of you did access a memory that is complicated. Maybe grief did come up for you, loss, but maybe also joy, because those things, of course, can coexist. So I wanted to share with you how I actually arrived at this topic for this talk tonight. During the holiday months, during December, my husband and I were sitting in the living room, as we do now during COVID, every day. And there are a lot of songs and there's so much music that many of you maybe associate with that time of year, but also for us and our family. We associate these specific songs with memories of the past, sharing them with specific people, specific experiences, making music together with other people, having that feeling, that connection that music can bring, and so many memories associated with this music. Well, I was about to play music one evening and I was going to access these songs that we usually play this time of year. And I stopped and I said to him, do you want to hear this? Should we listen to this? And he said, yeah, absolutely. And we actually took the time to listen to those songs that were hard, that brought up so many feelings of grief, because this year we won't make new memories with those songs. Yet we really did, didn't we? We cried, we shared past memories, we talked about how much we missed the people, those experiences, those connections. And like I said, we made a new memory with those songs. So if you think about it, this is really why we like music, isn't it? Because it makes us feel something. And as Ben mentioned, we can feel so many things in a short time, every minute, every hour, every day. We experience loss and growth, loss and growth. So while we were reflecting on the loss by listening to that music together, we were also growing because we were letting ourselves feel it. So in closing, to give you your own experiential assignment, because it wouldn't be music therapy without giving you an assignment, I really encourage you to listen to a song that maybe you've been avoiding. Take the time to really listen. Feel whatever comes up for you. Feel the grief. Feel the joy. Let the music help you move through it and see what happens. Thank you so much for this invitation tonight. And it is time to transition to our next speaker. Carly Saravia is a counselor at North Hennepin Community College. She is passionate about utilizing mindfulness and meditation as a tool for maintaining mental health. She is grateful for this opportunity to share how it can be helpful for dealing with grief and loss. Take it away, Carly.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. That was lovely. Really important. I can totally think of specific songs that I should spend some time with myself. My name is Carly. I'm one of the counselors at North Hennepin, and I'm really, really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I am here to talk about mindfulness and meditation, and just kind of explain a little bit and lead you through an experience where you can kind of process some grief through a meditation. So a meditation is basically an example of mindfulness. It's an opportunity for you to just stop and get still and experience kind of what you're going on right now. And that's what mindfulness is. It's just being mindful of what's happening right here and right now. Meditation is a great example of that. So one of the benefits of meditation and mindfulness is just being present, really experiencing what you're going through right now. It can really be helpful with processing grief, anxiety, loss, anything where you're just kind of uncomfortable, because it allows you to kind of stop worrying about the past and stop worrying about the future and just get quiet. And so some of the benefits that we find with meditation and mindfulness is it allows you to really slow down your brainwaves. Because when you're worried or anxious, your brainwaves are really they're pretty amped up. Your thoughts are amped up. You might have lots of different things going on. But as you slow down your brainwaves, then you allow more critical thinking to come back. Because when you get anxious, when you get sad, your focus gets smaller and smaller. And sometimes it's not so easy for problem solving. You're no longer accessing the executive functioning parts of your brain. It allows you to become more creative thinking and getting more in touch with your intuition. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to use, it's an app that I really love. It's called Insight Timer. And on here, there's guided meditations. A guided meditation is just where someone else kind of talks you through it, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'm not asking you to clear your mind. I'm asking you to kind of follow the instructions that I give you. So there's meditations on here. There's classes. There's timers. So that's what I use it for, and it's free. So I've got this bowl that I like to use. So I'm going to use that as the sound for the beginning and the end of our meditation. And then I'll just kind of lead you through the whole process. So you can go ahead and close your eyes and just listen to the gong. So I ask you to sit comfortably in your chair, both feet on the floor, your hands in your lap. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, it's a good way to kind of focus in on your body, which is what we're going to do. The first thing I want you to do is to listen to the sounds around you. What do you hear? Do you hear the heat going on in your house? People working in the kitchen? What are the sounds you're hearing around you? As we're focusing on this present moment, you're listening to what you're hearing. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. I like to use the sound of the air flowing in through your nose and out through your mouth to be able to have another sound to focus on to make you grounded in your body. Now I want you to place your hand on your chest and your other hand on your belly. And you're going to breathe in slowly. As you breathe in, your chest expands. You feel that with your hand, and then your belly expands. As you breathe out, your belly goes in, and your chest goes in. As you breathe in, your belly goes out, your chest goes out. You breathe out, your belly goes in, and your chest goes in. Breathe in, belly out, chest out. Exhale, belly in, chest in. I like to think of that motion of your chest and belly going in kind of waves. And that can be a very meditative, grounding experience right there to get you nice and calm. And now I want you to ask yourself a question. I want you to ask yourself, what is it that you are grieving right now? What is something that you have lost recently? And I'm going to give you some space and quiet to just let whatever bubble up come up to the surface, and don't judge it, just accept it for what it is. What are you grieving? Now I want you to ask yourself, how is it affecting you? Is it affecting your body, your health? Is it affecting your relationships, your work, your concentration? I want you to give yourself some space to let whatever come up, however it's affecting you, come out. How is this loss affecting you? Now I want you to ask yourself, what is it that you need to heal? As Ben said, sometimes grief needs a discharge, an outlet. What is it that you need to process this grief or loss and heal it. We all have the answers to our own questions. We know what we're dealing with. We know what's best for us. Sometimes we just really need to set that space aside, as Ben described, and listen to ourselves. And this activity, this example of a meditation you can use to process anything. It can be grief or loss. It can be what's going on with you at work. It can be anything that's just where you just need a little bit of space and time to kind of process it and look at it. And you can obviously stretch it out to much more time. You can use, I like to use a notebook and write down my answers, because a lot of times I have a lot of answers that are pretty profound and pretty insightful that I wouldn't have tapped into if I didn't give myself that time and space to process it. So you always have the answer right within you. You also always have the ability to calm yourself right within you. That ability to calm yourself is just found by focusing on your breath. It's right here in the middle of your chest every single day. Every breath you take, you can tap into that to calm yourself and to just kind of refocus, to make sure that your mind is open again instead of starting to kind of get too small of a focus. So it's a very powerful tool that you can use for any sort of discomfort that you're experiencing. So now I want you to take 2 deep breaths in through your mouth and out through your nose. We're going to go ahead and come out of the meditation. You can open your eyes and look around the room, kind of stretch your body, get back into yourself again. Just know that there's so many good resources out there for mindfulness and meditation, and the workbook that you're going to get from being a part of this experience has some really great resources in there to get you started or to just kind of expand your practice. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back off to Ben. We're going to go on to the question and answer portion of our evening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carly. I could have used that before speaking, but I feel very calm now. Also, thank you to Shelly and Kayla for leading us through those exercises and sharing your talents and knowledge with us. This part of the program, we invite the audience to help us access our collective wisdom through some discussion and conversation. So please feel free now to write some questions or comments into the chat section, and myself and the rest of the panel will answer now.
I know a couple of you had your hands up in the participants, so if you had your hand up, please go ahead and type out your question. My name is Johanna Gangle, by the way. I'm a mental health therapist at North Hennepin in the Care Center. We have one question to start with. In your opinion, so I think this was during Ben's presentation, is coping a form of grieving?
I guess I will take that question then. Thank you, Johanna. I think grieving is a way we cope. A metaphor that I like to use is it's how we digest or metabolize the painful aspects of our life. So if you think about digestion, it's something where our body kind of goes to work on something and breaks it down. So I definitely think grieving is a fundamental way we cope with these losses and pains.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Okay, we got another good one. Can one grieve something that they have gained through this pandemic? Not necessarily something one has lost, but something that was gained that they didn't want. I think that was open to whatever panelists may want to join that question and discussion.
Yeah, I think both of those next two questions Ben could answer.
Yeah, I would definitely say that we can grieve gains as well. I go back to that word of change in my grief definition, or our grief definition. Yeah, any kind of change, a subtraction, an addition, is something we grieve. I like to think of even I brought up the baby earlier, but having kids, I think most of us, most of the time, would consider that an addition to our life, an important event, maybe one of the most important events, and it's also something we grieve. It's a challenge. We lose freedom. We have to learn how to prioritize people in a new way. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement that things we would consider gains can also be things that we grieve.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben. Let's see, we'll go to what is the relationship between grief and trauma?
That's a great question, and honestly one I wrestle with occasionally, at least, if not more than that. I don't know. I've seen there's a guy named Alan Wolfelt who I think he would argue that trauma is a kind of grief. So I've heard that framing. I'm also aware of the perspective that trauma has some unique characteristics to it. Often with a trauma, there's some sort of intense fear, often the fear of death or a fear of harm, and that makes it a unique characteristic. You could also say in that instance, somebody lost their sense of security, their sense of safety. So I don't know entirely. I'm open to interpretations on that. Trauma to me has like a heavier connotation to it in some ways. But it's possible trauma is a severe form of loss that we've given a special name to. I think that's how I would answer the question, at least now.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Ben. I'm going to sort of lump together a couple questions we have that are a bit more specific and see if maybe Ben can give us some general tips. One is about repairing a broken heart. Another is about going back to work after losing a spouse. And another is about how to help adult children after losing a parent. So they're kind of big, specific ones. I'm wondering, Ben, if you can just kind of give us a really short answer around what's the best way to sort of start getting support and start working on grief.
No, those are complex situations, and my heart goes out to you. I don't know where to start. Grief, in my way, doesn't lend itself to simple answers. I think probably what's most important is that you're identifying where you're at in this, that you've had these losses, and you're realizing that moving forward or moving into something is going to be challenging. I think that awareness in itself is probably the best place to start. And where you go with that, I don't think I would be doing your story justice to, speculate on that. But pay attention to how you're feeling. And I think Kayla phrased it nicely that, as did Carly, that we kind of have this way of knowing where to go, even if we can't see that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for giving us that answer on some very difficult situations. I appreciate our participants being so open. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Samantha.
I just wanted to add to that too. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Stangelis, counselor at North Hennepin. And Ben, thank you so much for stating that there's no simple answer, and we wish that there was when it comes to grief. And I think one thing that I would add to that would be to ask for help. Don't go it alone. Don't think that this is it's a story I have of a woman that I see on a regular basis. She actually does my nails. She lost her mother, and I saw her within a week of her losing her mother, and she was a mess. And if you remember in the beginning, I said this grief is messy. And I saw her about a month later, and she's like, well, I think I have it all together. And I brought her a card, and she broke down crying. And she said, I guess I don't have it together. And I was so thankful for the skills that I have as a counselor to help my friend, who also happens to be my nail lady, cope with her grief, and give her the permission that it's okay, that it's not okay. I think that's it, just allowing yourself grace and permission to not be okay, to know that it's messy, and don't go at it alone. That would be, now I'm getting all teary-eyed, grief. So that would be what I would add. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a very important reminder. And I think it speaks to some of the other questions that we have popping up around specific situations. 100% seek support. Okay, I'm not sure how we're doing on time, since I know Samantha just popped in. And she's kind of our moderator when it comes to time. So we will try to address maybe one or two more questions and then move into our sort of closing statements.
I think we have time for that.
Definitely. Okay, perfect. So we have another one that we'll go with, is probably mostly for Ben and also the counselors. Do you have suggestions for helping others recognize what they're going through as grief and how to encourage this type of self-care, particularly for those who don't have much time or space for self-care? Ben or counselors, whoever feels like they can answer that.
Yeah, those are interesting questions. Helping someone recognize its grief. I don't know. It kind of goes back to my comments around just grief literacy, and I guess letting them know you're there to talk, I think, is helpful. I don't know. Depending on the situation, you could pose the idea. But it's dangerous territory for a lot of people. There's a lot of reasons why we stay away from grief, and it's hard to be sensitive yet encouraging for people to go there with you. But I would like to think that invitation that you're making would facilitate that, and I don't know how that might come about, but that you're laying that groundwork, you're holding that space, you're modeling that caring and kindness. I think that could go a long way. And the other thing I would say that routinely surprises me about this sphere of life is that I think people are generally hungry to talk about it. And I've been, I don't know, it never ceases to amaze me how many people that I sit down with, or used to sit down with, now talk on the phone with, who just pour out their hearts. And it's literally within 30 seconds of meeting me. I don't think they even know my name or what I do. And they're letting me into the most intimate aspects of their life and just unburdening. So I really believe that people want to share this, and they just really need to know that they have that permission and that there's somebody there that's willing to receive it. The other approach you could try, I think, has to do with just the barriers to talking. And if you could help identify those, sometimes that could be useful. So even just something like, I've noticed that, you're struggling and it's hard for you to talk about that. What do you think that's about? Or what are you concerned about if you were to share? What's holding you back? Sometimes I think if we can get at those barriers, then we're able to get them to step aside and we're able to get at what's behind that. And I've been talking so long, I forgot about the second part of that question.
I believe it was about self-care. And after you get folks to recognize grief, how do you sort of follow up and help them do some sort of self-care if they don't have much time for said self-care? And we're even giving some suggestions in the chat about just scheduling it and making it work. But Ben, if you have thoughts.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I think scheduling it is. Sometimes I'll say to people like, you need to make a date with grief. They're like, what do you mean a date with grief? I'm like, well, let's put it on the calendar. Block out an hour next week where that's your grief time. And, and then I often help them kind of develop what that date would look like. Do you need to light a candle? Do you want to have a little dinner? But how do you just make that space? I think the combination of just the pace of life, and there's always something we could be doing in this online world, can mix that with a little bit of our own aversion to these spaces. And yeah, I think it's pretty easy to put off or avoid caring for ourselves and tending to our grief. Open to more eloquent explanations than that from the rest of the panel.
I think you put it pretty well. I think a date with grief is a very important idea. I think at this point, we're probably going to wrap it up on the questions. I know there are a few people left over that we didn't address your question. Thank you for sending them in. I apologize that we won't be able to get to them tonight. I think I'm going to echo what's kind of already been said, that it's so important to seek individual support. There are great experts out there like Ben and like the counselors who would love to support you through this stuff. So if you have some more questions, I apologize, we won't be able to get to them, but thank you for your time. I now have sort of the kind of, we'll call it a fun wrap up to a very heavy topic around grief, which is to sort of remind all of you that you're going to get some mail from us, which is kind of cool. So the first 150 folks who registered, and I will say that we're under 150 people tonight in the audience, are going to get a care package, a physical care package. Look for a priority envelope that looks like that. What's inside is a couple fun things and a couple serious things as well, of course, to help you sort of soothe that emotional discomfort that we've been talking about when it comes to grief. So I want to highlight a couple things. Carly had alluded to there being a coronavirus specific workbook. It's by the Wellness Society. So we went ahead and we printed out a physical copy of that. It's very handy. They also have it online in a whole bunch of languages. So if you're into it, someone that might benefit, send them over to that website. It's very accessible, and all the links inside of it obviously are active online, whereas they're not active in the printout. We also are including modeling clay. I don't have that to demo for you, but it's important to think about how sometimes, just like with Shelley's exercise, it's important to process in a way that's not just in your brain with your words, right? So we're including that as well as color pencils to kind of get out of that funk that's just in your mind. With the color pencils, we're also including some postcards, which I'm pretty pumped about. We actually had one of our panelists and organizers help design these. So the idea is, of course, to color these, get out of your head, send them off to folks, reconnect, have some physical mail. I don't know, I love getting mail. And with that, we also have a snack. I'm going to call it a snack, but really it's to practice more mindful eating. We're sending you some chocolate as well as some chewing gum. So again, don't just pull it out of the package right away and eat it. Think about maybe savoring it. There are instructions in here on how to do a mindfulness exercise with the chocolate, or also how to utilize the chewing gum and everything else that's in the package. There's even more. So the other really fun thing is that every single participant's name will be put into a drawing to win a Fitbit fitness tracker or a therapy lamp. So therapy lamps help combat the winter funk is what we'll call it, where we all have less vitamin D in our body. So sitting under a therapy lamp can really help with that. And the Fitbits are pretty cool. I think most people know what those are, so you can track your steps. So please check your email. Okay, so we'll be telling participants what they got and who won for the big prizes via email. So please check your email. And of course, check your physical mail, because you're going to get chocolate. Why would you not check your physical mail? And I have one more thing before we wrap up. Quick message to any of the North Hennepin Community College students in the audience. You now have seen and spoken with, or heard, I guess you haven't spoken with so much, but heard me and Samantha and Carly all tonight. So I'm hoping that you can see our faces and get to know that there are people on campus who would be very, very happy is a very complicated word to use, but I'm going to use it. Happy to help you in your healing and your grieving process. We want to partner with you and figure out how can we cope and get you sort of through this time that's full of all this grief and loss. So by all means, come see us in the Care Center. And with that, I'm going to plug that the Care Center is having a Care Week starting February 22nd. So we're going to do a bunch of online events to sort of get to know us and also introduce you to some of our really vital resources that address things like basic needs as well as mental health. So if you have the student app, keep an eye on the app and also keep an eye on your email for more information on that. And with all of that being said, I just want to give a really big thank you and sort of round of applause, quietly, just a round of applause for me, to our panelists for being here. And I want to thank everybody in the audience for attending the Nordby Lecture Series, Recognizing Loss and Navigating Grief During COVID. It's been a beautiful night. Take care, stay warm, and thank you.